Good pay or good boss? When it comes to developing a career, what's your priority? I think this topic deserves some attention, so let's talk about it. Welcome back to Awesome Addiction. I'm your host, Nora Lim. In today's episode, we'll dedicate the first half to good pay and the rest to good boss. I'll try to include the timestamp in the description, but I recommend checking out the entire thing. Before we get into all that good stuff, I want to share a little story about my friend. Let's call her Sandy. Sandy graduated from CSUN with a bachelor's degree in multimedia productions, and that was during the pandemic. She's one of the most passionate people when it comes to fighting climate change, and her dream is to work on documentaries and maybe travel while working. Because as filmmakers, we move around quite a bit. But the reality is always harsh. It ain't easy to get a job, let alone a dream job. She eventually got hired, but here's the catch. Her boss has unrealistic, ambitious expectations without paying her enough. Things like this happen really often in LA. New people and foreign people are often taken advantage of. I mean, everyone here is desperate for an opportunity. Many would even offer to work for free in this incredibly competitive field, just to get their foot into the door. So, this is really hard for people who are just starting out. Sandy was expected to be a jack-of-all-trades filmmaker, which means she has to handle filming, editing, and creating motion graphics. And her editing task includes handling 4K multicam footage. Her boss doesn't provide necessary equipment either, and her computer couldn't handle it. She felt really overwhelmed and didn't know what to do with this massive amount of footage. So, she reached out to a few people whom she trusted. Being her former classmate and a little older, I happen to have some experience on some video projects. So, she came to me with these questions, and I did my best to help her. But I felt like that wasn't enough. From the way she described it, I heard some underlying problems. So, I recommended her to communicate with her boss, like schedule a one-on-one session that you check in with each other. Make sure that your expectations align and that you're not too overwhelmed by your workload. Because I believe keeping your employees happy definitely goes a long way. And if things doesn't work out and you're not a good fit, maybe it's a good time to plan your exit. Anyhow, this story about Sandy kind of inspired me to start this episode to discuss our priorities. Good pay or good boss? Which one would you go for? As for good pay, it could be a salary or a one-time payment for a freelance project, and the amount of compensation is to your satisfaction. Basically, a good amount of dough. A good boss could mean your direct supervisor or the owner of the business, who values employee growth and is willing to empower you to achieve your goals. It could also mean that they will challenge you in a positive way and allowing you to take ownership of your projects. Being a single lady in my mid-20s and without any major commitment, I'm going with good boss. I started my first summer job right before I turned 15. That first job, as a waitress, was an amazing experience. That wasn't a career, the pay was little, but I had so much fun. I learned to build connection with my customers and my coworkers. I learned to follow up with their requests, and there's just so much energy around that tiny restaurant. Later on, as I gained more work experience related to my career, I've met both good and bad bosses. Those bad bosses are not bad people. But deep down, I knew their management style wasn't right for me. And over time, it became merely a job, as if I'm trading time for money. And this to me is alarming. I started looking for alternative options and later successfully made this switch. In the United States, my status is international student. I graduated in December 2020. I am now granted the permission to work or intern for companies. But back then, before I graduated, I have to stay enrolled with a full-time course load. At the time, I'm not willing to neglect building my work experience. I knew having work experience means better odds when it comes to job hunting, and this is why I want to stay employed, even if I'm back to school. So I tried my best to accommodate both. For paid jobs, I'm allowed to work up to 20 hours per week on campus. If it's unpaid, sure, I'm allowed to volunteer my time. So yeah, I used to work for free for a while. I think at one point, my craziest schedule was 7 a.m. to 11 p.m. and later on, I adjusted it to 8 to 10. So my schedule was really hectic, but in retrospect, I did my best and there's no regrets. And so with my experience, I think having a good boss is extremely important. Not only because he or she cultivates a healthy, encouraging work environment, but he or she also holds the power of assigning you your job, your projects. In other words, if they didn't give you the opportunity, you really don't get to perform. If something doesn't feel right, trust your intuition. You get to decide what's right for you. I'm curious to see what people think. So I conducted a little survey on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram. We have a small and growing community on Instagram at awesomeaddiction.podcast. Feel free to follow us and join our next discussion. To my surprise, a lot of people chose good boss. I mean, I was kind of expecting more people to choose good pay, but seems like people are really putting emphasis on having a good boss, which can be a positive thing. Mental health is important and it is priceless. On LinkedIn, 11 out of 12 people picked good boss, and that's equivalent to about 90%. Only one picked good pay. On Facebook, it's pretty interesting. I don't see the option to conduct a poll, so I asked my friend to leave a comment. 5 out of 8 people picked good pay. That's equivalent to about 63%, and 3 people picked good boss. On Instagram, 15 out of 19 people picked good boss. That's about 79%, and 4 picked good pay. So, overall people around me tend to go with good bosses. Besides asking people what they'd go for, I also ask why. Thank you so much for participating. I'll be reading these comments throughout today's episode. In my opinion, what's good about choosing a good pay is that you'll be in a better position when some unexpected circumstances strike. You're in less of a passive position. Having a choice is great, just like being prepared. That's why people buy into insurance policies. Just in case something were to happen, they're covered. The downside of getting a good amount of money is that a company will demand more when they invest more in you. And for that reason, higher pay comes with more responsibilities, and that leads to long working hours usually. When there's a time crunch, well, you're expected to stay up late and work on your thing. In the short term, personally, I think it's worth the hassle. I would suck it up. But in the long term, just be careful. Take care of yourself, constantly check in with your feelings, and follow what your heart says. You may ask, under what circumstances should you make money your top priority? My answer to that is obviously when I'm strapped for cash. Money is incredibly important when you're freelancing because you don't get all the benefits that come with a full-time job, like health insurance, dental, vision, 401k. So you should plan for yourself. I think it's important to question if this is going to be a job or career. It helps to separate the expectation, because sometimes, if it's just a job, it's like trading time for money, right? We all had summer jobs, part-time jobs, and usually, we didn't expect it to develop into anything serious. Whereas a career gets a little more formal, like, do you see yourself working for the same company or industry in 5 years, or even 10 years? Money is key when I have a major commitment, such as paying for a mortgage loan, or if I need to provide for my family. These are legit concerns. I want to be someone responsible when I'm in these situations. So yeah. I'd say definitely go for money when you're a boss or when you're a capable person. It takes time to build up your profession. After going through all that hassle, you definitely deserve to be compensated fairly. Being a good boss, in my opinion, is a huge responsibility because she has to focus on the big picture. A company needs to be profitable in order to maintain operations and make sure their employees can keep their jobs. Sometimes, it's easier to just be an employee and receive a steady paycheck. Well, your call. My friend Chuan, who picked good pay, thinks that a good boss can be subjective, but having a good salary is objective. And he's not wrong, because think about it. It takes time to get familiar with a new environment. There's no way of knowing it before you try. Annie, who picked good pay, mentions that there are no good bosses in the world. Following with the LOL. Is Annie being sarcastic? She sure has a great sense of humor. I mean, I've met a few good bosses, but it all comes after leaving the ones that I don't like. So if you can afford to leave, I think it's a good idea to plan your exit. And perhaps get a job offer before sending in your resignation letter. Suwon, who picked good pay, says that when you receive good pay, a bad boss will turn into a good boss. Very optimistic. Bravo. Jake wished that he could pick good pay, good boss, and good work culture if possible. He believes good pay allows you to achieve your dreams, good bosses care for your well-being, good company culture helps to ensure that you like the company. But if he can only pick one, he'd go with good pay. And if he's not facing his present troubles, he'd probably go for a good boss. I don't know what he's going through, but I wish him strength. Every day stepping out of your home, you meet people from different walks of life. You never know what people are going through, so just be nice to people whenever you can. And this wraps up our segment for good pay. Now we'll talk about good boss. As for choosing a good boss, the biggest benefit is having the opportunity to grow under this positive leadership and be given a chance to take ownership of your project. The only possible downside I could think of is you may get too comfy in the existing environment. Yiting picked good boss and says, the work environment is very important because you'll need to work with them for 8 hours a day. That means you need to get along with them. And with that being said, working under a bad boss might turn into long-term torture. To her, a good boss will offer you the pay that you deserve, and a good boss will make appropriate decisions. So, to sum it up, with a good leader, things will naturally fall into place. Adeline echoes with this idea and says that a good boss pays you well. And where to look for a good boss? Well, just put yourself out there and start working with different people. At the end of the day, no matter how much research you do, no matter how much advice you listen to, it's all theoretical. So go experience life, go fail fearlessly, and grow. Learn from your mistakes. Don't repeat them again. And once you fail enough times, hopefully you'll meet many good bosses along the way. And maybe one day, be a good boss yourself. Offer a fair rate, treat people with respect, and always communicate. You may wonder, under what circumstances should you make good boss your top priority? I think it's important to have a good boss when you're new to the game, especially during entry-level or mid-level positions. Having a mentor or someone to guide you through can be really helpful. Having a good boss is crucial when you're working a full-time job and ready to move forward with your career. Whenever you're ready, it's a good idea to communicate your career trajectory with your boss or manager. A good boss may be able to help you with this process. Just like what Liam mentions, having a positive supervisor will help empower you to better opportunities in the future. Shunchi, who picked good boss, says that a good boss can teach you things money can't buy. And Karhang kind of echoes with this idea and says, we can expect to learn more from a good boss, and through that knowledge, we're able to earn more in the future. He mentioned a Chinese proverb, 授人以鱼不如授人以渔. That means instead of giving someone a fish, it's better to teach them how to fish. Minsin and Asang focus on mental health aspect. High pay can ensure your abundance, while a good boss can provide you healthy mental state, which can't be purchased no matter how much money you have. Very true. And Asang had a friend who suffered from depression and anxiety disorder due to some workplace harassment. People often say no pain, no gain. But in this situation, even if you made a lot of money, is it worth the pain? I'll leave this to you, my friend. Yi Boon, who picked good boss, mentions that we have to deal with people all day at work, whereas money can only bring you so far. She emphasized that having a good boss sparks possibilities. But then, if she's in a difficult situation, she'll go for good pay in a heartbeat, for obvious reasons. Qi Xuan thinks that a good boss leads to better work culture. A good boss values your effort and the growth you had contributed to the company. If the company grows well, she thinks the worker will be rewarded handsomely. High pay sounds nice at the beginning, but working in a toxic environment or under a toxic boss might drain your motivation, and that affects your mental well-being. And that's why she picked good boss. I agree with what she said, and this wraps up our segment for good boss. Being a female in my mid-20s and unmarried, I don't have a lot of financial obligations as of now. But if I was born a man, I think I'd go for good pay. Let me explain what I mean. Most young people believe in gender equality. But again, similar to racial inequality and discrimination, this patriarchal ideal is also deeply rooted in Asia. A man is expected to provide for his family, and under this pressure, men are living with unnecessary financial burden that can actually be equally divided among partners. It's sad to see men being stressed out for this reason. I'm not preaching for anything in particular, but I think a question like this is worth discussing. What we think matters because our thoughts and actions dictate our future. Let that thought sink in. I think gender inequality has got to improve. Maybe we can initiate this conversation among our peers when we hang out. Would love to hear your thoughts. Do you believe in this idea that a man in a heterosexual relationship should provide? Or do you believe in equal contributions among partners? I think most of the LGBTQ folks and allies support equal contribution. But I'll save this topic for Pride Month, so stay tuned. If you're interested in this topic, make sure to subscribe to Awesome Addiction on your preferred podcast platform. But at the same time, I acknowledge that having a choice is a real privilege. Not gonna lie, from this point of view, I'm so darn lucky. Sometimes we really don't have a choice. And if that's you right now, hang in there, my friend. I hope things will get better soon. Figure out a plan if you can. There are endless possibilities in life. As an optimistic person, I believe so. Where I'm originally from, Penang, Malaysia, there's an unspoken pressure for men, or in Asia in general, I think. Some parents in Asia see raising a kid as a form of investment. It's like, imagine investing in the stock market and getting a monthly dividend. I saw an interesting YouTube video from Washington Post. Yi Shen Igi Chang mentions a Chinese saying that goes, "Raising children is to prevent old age and frailty." It is a Confucius ideal that dictates the obligatory responsibility to take care of their parents when they grow old. However, there's a reciprocation to that. When we're young, our parents raised us and provided guidance. So when they're old, it goes without saying that we should do the same for them. I believe this idea of filial piety is common across Asia. I mean, as someone who was born and raised in Asia, this makes sense to me. But in a broader sense, it's also giving the younger generation some financial limitations for sure. Coming from a multicultural society in Malaysia, I respect our differences. It's okay, we can agree to disagree. To my friends from other countries and cultures, do you find this interesting or absurd? If you're interested to find out more about this, feel free to look up the keyword filial piety on the internet. Or if you'd like to know more, we can discuss it in the future. Let us know. And here's my closing note for this episode. We tend to have different priorities in different stages of life. And that's okay. It's okay to change your mind. Every now and then, reevaluate your goals and see if you're still on the right path. People grow old, and unexpected circumstances happen all the time. When life spirals out of control, having some emergency funds in hand can be life-saving. There are tons of ways to make money. We just need to be creative. In this digital era, it's possible to work a full-time job and run an online business simultaneously, or get a second job. If I can manage my time, I'm definitely pursuing multiple streams of income. Just so if something like the pandemic ever happens again and my boss decides to let me go, I can still survive. But when it comes to a job, I think having a good boss is important because they can empower you to succeed. No matter which option you go with, take good care of yourself, hang in there, and I hope your persistence brings you a better future. And how we deal with our money matters. Learning how to allocate our income definitely goes a long way. When I get better in personal finance, that's when I'll share my experience. And lastly, I want to wish my friend Sandy all the best. I hope she figures out a solution soon. And as always, don't hesitate to reach out if you need help. That's all I got for our second episode. Dear Awesome Addicts, I hope you enjoyed it or learned something new. I would love to hear your thoughts. Leave us a comment or a message on Instagram at awesomeaddiction.podcast. Thanks for tuning in. This is Nora Lim signing off. Enjoy the rest of your day.